Okay, it's been a little while since I've shot one of these because teaching on campus, I've not had to make videos very often, but obviously for this online class, I'm going to be doing some of my comparisons this way. I wish I could show you the whole film if there was a way to do that. Sometimes maybe some of these films we'll be able to get some clips off YouTube, but some of these you can maybe find streaming. This one here, maybe Rear Window. They have remade it a few times, and I'll discuss that when I'm comparing the two. But this was the Hitchcock version. The short story that we've been reading called It Had to Be Murder. It was just a short story. We basically almost read the whole story by now. I did leave off the ending just so there can be some comparison. And, oops, lost my screen here. May have to, every once in a while, refresh it. Huh. It should come back on here. Let's see. But Hitchcock, when he made the film, Hitchcock made a lot of like what we would call today thriller films or suspenseful films. He was very good at storytelling, and that's what a lot of these stories I'm going to be doing comparison of is what kind of story are they telling? And Hitchcock, when he would plan out a movie, he'd already have it completely planned out in his mind what he was going to do. He would even say when it came time to shoot the movie and him direct it, that was kind of the most boring part because he had already pretty well knew what it was going to look like in his mind already. And so, the actual shooting of it was kind of mundane to him. But basically, he, as a young boy, he tells a story, this is Hitchcock himself, that he had stolen like a little piece of candy. He grew up in England and stolen something or did something really small. And his dad had him put in prison for a little bit, just to kind of scare him off of whatever his, little thing he did. And it really did scare him. And so there was a theme that he kind of stuck with throughout his films of being wrongfully accused. Now, he had, whatever he did, he actually did, but it was just something kind of small that his dad was trying to teach him a lesson. And, that just stuck with him as far as, what if you were wrongfully accused or put into prison or done, mistaken for something that you didn't actually do. And so he explored that theme a lot in his films. This one, some of the main, obviously, themes here is and they even bring it up in the film once, rear window ethics. Should you be watching your neighbors? Should Jeff be watching his neighbors? And so I'm going to go through some of these questions and then do some comparison. I'm going to have to probably every once in a while refresh this so it doesn't do that. And then I'm going to show you how the film kind of starts because there's several things that the film does right away to establish some storyline of why Jeff is spying on his neighbors. But the very first question I had you guys answer from the story, because when you're reading the story, you have it just jumps right in where he is staring and he kind of starts talking about maybe some of the reasons that he's doing it, but he doesn't really go into full detail. So I thought it was funny because some of the suspicions you guys had was about him. And it's supposed to kind of be that way. Why exactly is he staring out? Is he doing anything nefarious? But I asked the question, should the narrator of the story be spying on his neighbors? And some said, no, it's an invasion of privacy. And then some had kind of already clued in that there was maybe some reason why he had to do that. And so this is kind of studied in this film and in the story. Should he be, watching his neighbors this intently? And so how this has kind of been retold through the years is, now they remade it with Christopher Reeve, the guy that played the old Superman. And then they remade a film called Disturbia that was kind of loosely based. I think that one, Shia LaBeouf, he was under house arrest. And so he had to kind of be stuck at home and started to see things across the way. And then they've actually kind of remade it again in a story. I think it was called Woman in the Window. And it's a little bit different. There's other things going on. The main character's kind of afraid to go out of her house, and so she stays in her house, but she starts to see things across the way. So it's been told several times in different ways. This one, they're going to give a reason why he's stuck in his house. And we got to remember this is kind of taking place in the 50s and 60s, and so people were more, what I would say, open with their neighbors. People usually knew their neighbors. Now this takes place in New York City, and so it's supposed to be crowded, and it's in a crowded apartment. And so, you know, there's a lot going on with people. They're outside. Now, one thing the film does to kind of explain why all these people are kind of living their lives outside is that it's supposed to be really hot. And this was before air conditioning, so, you know, people were just opening their windows to cool off. And so it kind of tells a story that what else was he supposed to do besides watch his neighbors? And so, you know, it's kind of given reason to that a little bit. The book doesn't really necessarily say right away why he is watching his neighbors, but I kind of like it. If we were to update this today, you know, I could compare it to social media. You know, we basically, when we put things online, it's almost like opening our windows. Hey, everybody, look in, see what's going on, see what we're doing. And anybody could really look at that. You can do some privacy settings, but really, if someone really wanted to, they could kind of look into your life and what you're posting on there, and vice versa. You can go and see what other people are doing. And I mean, I'd have to be honest. I'm be honest, where there's been times I've, you know, we've probably all been guilty of, ooh, what's going on here? And seeing like an argument online or something where you're reading that, and you probably sometimes don't even know the people. You just kind of get kind of caught up in what's going on. And so, you know, there's that line still of what is acceptable and what's not. Now, there's some scenes in the film where he uses some, I don't want to say binoculars, but he's got camera equipment that he can see further, and you're almost going, okay, is that too far? You know, is that going too far of where you're like, okay, no longer is he using eyesight to just kind of see what's going on. He's actually using like telephoto lenses and stuff. So is that acceptable? And so it's explored in this film. That's one of the themes. I put, what circumstances would maybe make the narrator have to be in this position of watching his neighbors? And I like some of your guys' answers. You know, that's where some of you start cluing in that maybe he had a physical ailment, that he was stuck in the house, you know, something that he didn't really have a choice. What, if anything, in your opinion, is suspenseful so far? That was in the first part of the reading. Well, and that's where some of you guys kind of were wondering about him. You know, why is he doing this? What is he looking for? And then as the story goes on and you start seeing, you know, what the neighbor was doing was acting suspenseful. I had you start trying to kind of go ahead and establish, what do you think happened to the wife? The film, now here's the main comparison. And this you'll want to know. I will be asking you questions. Some of the test questions when we wrap this story up is going to be based on the film compared. And obviously I won't ask you questions like exactly about the film because we can't watch it. But some of the things I'll explain here, you'll want to kind of write down, remember, and you know, you can use your notes in these videos to help you. I do open notes and open material for the test. But basically, when we're reading the story, we're hearing Jeff's main thoughts. We're hearing his thoughts. He can be the narrator in the story, and we can read what he's thinking. In a film, they can't do that. Either they'd have to have a voiceover, kind of either talking his thoughts, which would be distracting, and it would definitely be something that would, I would say, change the whole feel of the film if you were just sitting and watching him and then listening to him narrate his own story. What Hitchcock does, he introduces some new characters to the story to give Jeff someone to bounce his ideas off and to bounce his thoughts off, to where he's talking to people. And you in the film, you become a person that's looking out the window. With the setup that he uses, the way he has you look out the window, you become a viewer like Jeff is. And so you kind of become that person staring out the window, and you get caught up in these people's lives. Now, he also adds more characters to who he watches. Hitchcock liked to have comedy in his films because his films were usually serious and suspenseful, and he felt like that comedy gave you a little bit of a release from that to where it wasn't always so serious. You could kind of laugh at some things. And so he would have things like funny that Jeff would see to just kind of break that always being suspenseful. One person, now they have this in the story, but it's, you know, a dancer that lives across the way and she's always dancing. Well, in the film, Hitchcock hired a woman that she was going to take dance lessons. She thought, well, I'm going to be a dancer in a film. And he told her, no, I don't want you to be good. You're living in some cheap apartments and you're not really going to be a good dancer. You just dance. And so he just had her make up dance moves, and they're kind of funny. One of them, she actually is eating chicken, like walking around eating a drumstick as she's dancing, and she starts dancing with the drumstick. And it was just something that, you know, he felt like that would be a more comedic person of that going on. So he added characters to watch to give it more full story, but he also, the main change he made is he gave Jeff a girlfriend that would come over and get kind of also caught up in that story so that they could talk about what they were seeing. And what they do with the girlfriend, with Grace Kelly, is they make her be very skeptical at first. Like, you know, oh, you're just imagining things. And Jeff has to kind of convince her. And then she starts seeing some things that she's like, wait a minute, run that by me again. And then pretty soon, she is just as involved in it. And it's kind of funny. That's another comedy thing they do is, you know, they have them kind of be a fighting couple at first, where Jimmy Stewart, who's playing Jeff, is kind of like, you know, I wish she'd be more adventurous and stuff, because she's a model and she's, you know, I'll go ahead and tell you, he's a photographer that in the film, that's why he has the camera equipment, and he goes out to like all these far off places and lives in huts and, you know, takes photos and roughs it. And he's like, you know, she's not going to ever be like that. Well, once she starts getting involved in the story and starts being adventurous, and like she starts investigating, he starts to think, whoa, maybe she is like that or can be like that. And they both kind of learn about themselves in that way. So it's a story within this story of what's going on. If this story is adapted to film, what changes do you think you need to make? That's where I was talking, where Hitchcock added those so that there could be dialogue. He also makes the maid a much more prominent role. She comes in every day, and it's not Sam. He changes it to an actress who actually wasn't that much older than Jimmy Stewart, but she kind of plays this maid that comes in and checks on him, and she's funny. She's, you know, kind of witty and has things to say, and so he uses some comedy there. I'm going to go ahead and do this so it keeps unpausing. And then I said, what type of actors and actresses would need to be in the role so far? The main one wanted you to think of, and I ask this question a lot throughout these stories, is be thinking about who would be your choice to tell these stories. You can use modern actors. That's fine, you know, that may be the only films you've seen, and so you know those characters. But Hitchcock would use Jimmy Stewart a lot for certain purposes. And some movies he used Cary Grant, who Cary Grant was a more like what you would say debonair, like sophisticated person. It'd be like, you know, maybe I'm trying to think of more modern examples, but it'd be like a George Clooney or something where it's you know, plays more sophisticated roles, you could say. He would use him, Cary Grant, for a role of like someone that most men aren't like, you know, like he was everywhere he'd go, women would ask about him and want to see him. Jimmy Stewart, he would use more as an everyday man. that like this could happen to anybody. He kind of did that sometimes. He would choose actors and actresses based on what he was trying to tell in the story. And with this one, he just kind of wanted it to be, what if your everyday man was just stuck in his house and had to watch people? What would happen? So he really wanted to use Jimmy Stewart in the way of just being that everyday person. Then the last questions, let me go to that one, and then I'll show you the clips of the film I was going to show you, so I can stop unpausing this. I start asking you still, do you still think something happened to the wife? I asked, do you think there's any backstory to Jeff? The story does not give him, it just jumps right in. This, it starts to show how he got hurt, why he was stuck in the house, kind of his personality, so that you kind of knew what was going on with him. And that kind of takes the suspicion away from Jeff right away. And it kind of has you be also the viewer, because you kind of feel like him. I asked why you think they changed the name of the film to Rear Window, and some of you guys kind of caught on to that. If it had been, it had to be murder, it kind of it almost puts that in your mind right away. And really with this, he wanted that to build a little bit. And then, so I liked what someone put about the Rear Window, that it being only one view of something. I thought that was a really good observation, that, not to make a pun there, but you only have one view, that rear window. And so maybe you are like judging a book by its cover, where it's like, well, I can only see this, so my mind's made up, when maybe you haven't taken in all the other views. And Jeff has to wrestle with this, and so does Grace Kelly, the one that plays the girlfriend. They have to wrestle, like, should we be doing this? Are we being, too judgmental of little things? The detective, when he comes over, he's like, look, there's reasons for all these things. And, he says, do you want people to see everything of your life, and so there's that tug and pull. And then I asked, do you think they included the part where they inspected his house? And they leave that out in the film because, when I read the story, I kind of thought, well, that's illegal. You can't just go on someone's suspicion into someone's house. So they really kind of leave that out, because it's like, the detective does everything by the book. And he's like, look, we can't, he even says once, we have to have a warrant, the Constitution. And so that's kind of not in the story. But I wanted to show you this opening scene where they set up some of the reasons why he's stuck in his house. And I probably should turn it down just a little bit. So I'll go here. So you can see the scene where they set it up where you can look out into the house and look in. You're a viewer, you get a full view of things. So he kind of pans the camera. Now, most of the story takes place from this view. Almost all of it. There's one shot where they show a helicopter. That's where the dancer lives. But then they cut to this is Jeff, and they're going to cut to the temperature, because it's showing why all their windows are open and why it's hot. So that kind of sets up a lot. And then they're going to cut to why Jeff is in the house the way he is, okay? So they show him he's got a broken leg. And he can do this with just scenes. He can do this with just, there's his broken camera. This was the picture he took, that obviously this is how he got hurt. And so it kind of shows why he's in the predicament he is, what he does for a living, why it's hot, the windows are open. He's telling all this with just pictures. And he kind of gets it set up with that way. And then, like I said, throughout the film, he kind of tells stories by talking to the people involved. I want to cut to where they have this conversation, what I was talking about, where they could bounce ideas off each other, and this is what they do in the film to kind of tell the story. Let's go to right here, I think. So the detective, you know, he comes over. There's things that they're not, you know, he's always kind of saying, well, you think this, but it could be this, and you know, you're making assumptions that I can't make. And so he pretty well tells him here, look, we checked the trunk, it belongs to Mrs. Thorwald. She picked it up. You know, he's kind of telling her, you guys have dreamed a lot of stuff up.
You mean to say you can explain everything that's gone on over there and is still going on?
No, neither can you. That's a secret private world you're looking into out there. People do a lot of things in private they couldn't possibly explain in public.
Like disposing of their wives.
Get that idea out of your mind. It'll only lead in the wrong direction.
What about the knife and the saw?
Did you ever own a saw?
What? At home in the garage I had.
How many people did you cut up with? Oh, with the couple of hundred knives you probably own in your lifetime. Well, your logic is backward.
You can't ignore the wife disappearing and the trunk and the jewelry.
So, you know,
Check the railroad station.
this is where they can have these conversations and tell the story through dialogue, as opposed to us reading it, you know, with his thoughts. Now, they still leave in some scenes where Jimmy Stewart, and this is where he was such a good actor, they leave in scenes that he tells a story just with his facial reactions. There's a scene, without giving away too much, because if you do have a chance to watch the film, I would highly recommend it. It's a very good film. Keeps you suspense. But there's a scene where she goes over to check for something, and she's in the apartment. Now, it's not in the story at all. It's in the film, because she's not even in the story, in the short story. But she goes over to check, and he didn't even know she was going to go over there. So he's like, he's wanting her to stop.
Lisa, what are you doing?
And he's just like, okay. He's having to act with his eyes and his face to get her to stop from going in there.
Lisa, what are you doing? Don't go.
And then when he comes back, the neighbor comes back, he can see it happening. She can't. And he's trying to warn her. And his face, I mean, you can just feel this is probably one of the most suspenseful parts in the film for me, because I'm just like, oh my goodness, you know, he can't do anything about it.
Lisa. Lisa. Precinct 6, Sergeant Hogan.
Hello. Look, a man is assaulting a woman at 125 West 9th Street, second floor, the rear. No, make it fast.
Okay.
L.B. Jeffries. Chelsea 25598.
See, Hitchcock would use that back and forth. You are, it's like you or Jeff right now. You're watching, you get to see everything like he's seeing. And you're just as helpless as he is. you know, if you're watching the film, you can't do anything either. And so you feel that, like, oh my goodness, she can't get out. And see, he's such a good actor. He does. So, you know, those were things that he put in there to add to that suspense of that story. And you get caught up. You're just a viewer like he is at that point. And so as far as compared, I mean, obviously the story pretty well follows the same outline. You know, Jeff is watching his neighbors. He makes little observations. He starts to have suspicions about this neighbor. And, you know, he kind of has to follow through with it to the end because now he's invested. Like, he's got to figure out what's happened. And then as far as differences, you know, the characters that were added would be the main differences because, you know, they had to add to it to tell that story on film. You couldn't have necessarily a story of someone just sitting there thinking to themselves. And so that was kind of added to it. And he added a lot of extra characters to kind of give the film some, you know, fuller story. One funny thing he did, he had a couple that would sleep out on the balcony and they would kind of argue with each other. And there was a scene where it starts raining. They sleep outside. Their bed is outside because it's hot. And so they're sleeping outside. Well, it starts raining and they're supposed to like grab the bed and try to throw it in the house. Well, Hitchcock told the man to pull it through this window. He told the woman, without them knowing about it, he told her, you're going to be pulling it through this window. And so they really were fighting to pull the bed in because they thought, you know, different directions. And the director wanted that. Hitchcock wanted that. And so there was things that he did like that to kind of add comedy. Another thing he does in all his films usually is he makes a small little appearance. There's other directors that do that. Kind of started with him. He would make just a quick little, I'll say cameo. A lot of times he wouldn't even say anything. And then it became a thing where he almost had to every time because people would look for him in the film. So, but very good film. I kind of wanted to compare those two things. I'll ask you some questions based on that a little bit. And let me look here. I'll be posting the questions with it. Let me draw something here up. And make sure I covered that. One more thing is like I did mention a little bit, this is going to be one of the questions too, is about modernizing the movie. You know, like I said, they've retold it now in newer versions. I want you to think about how, if you told this story today, you know, what things would you do to modernize it? I don't think, now New York, you could probably still do one where people are that close to their neighbors and they maybe see stuff that goes on. But really, today, more people probably are closed off from their neighbors and they have their windows shut. Obviously, with air conditioning, that kind of fixes that, where people don't always have their windows open. So, you know, you think about ways that you can modernize this story a little bit. And like I mentioned, we kind of have a new version of this as far as with social media. You know, is there things now? That would be a little tricky for this because no one's going to probably put on social media if they, you know, had done something, you know, really bad to where they would just put that on social media. But there's things that people do out in the open that you could kind of have that version to modernize. So be thinking about that. Be thinking about characters you would use and some of the comparisons here. And we'll keep going. Our next story we'll post as well, and I'll have you start reading on that here soon. So thanks, guys.